interview, preparing for a coding interview does take time. So the earlier that you are in the game, so the better it is for you. So I'm really happy that you guys will have some time before your actual interview. So here's the agenda for today. So I'll talk about the goals of the presentation, and then I'll introduce myself. And then talk about different stages of the interview preparation and resume preparation, and then online coding, and then in the end I'll talk about the in-person interviews. And after that I'll open it up for question and answers. So the goals of the talk. So there's a lot of mystery around how the interview process works. Even though like how well you do in the interview actually decides your salary package in the end. People don't really like to talk about this very well, or like people when they get the job, people go on LinkedIn and post about where they got the job, etc. But it's almost like an iceberg where you can see the top that okay, this guy works for Microsoft, but I want to share the other aspects where like before I got into Microsoft, I had so many rejections from like Amazon or any other interviews. And talk about that. So that's one of the main like theme of my talk today. So to not just show off that I work for Microsoft, but I want to show how I got there, so that you can also learn and benefit from the talk. So you also need to understand that it's more than coding. So some of my friends who I mentored, sometimes they're actually better coders than myself, but they still do very bad in the interviews because there are some like attitude adjustments that you have to do in order to pass the interview. So I'll talk about those, and it's really like the third. I think the biggest one is taking an honest assessment of yourself is the hardest part, because let's say I look at myself and say, okay, I don't know these, I don't know binary trees or some topic like that, right? So if that is my assessment, then I have to put in the work to learn that. I have to spend days to solve problems. So, but like the easier option for it to say is like, I know binary tree, I don't have to learn to do it. So you have to change that mindset. You have to be honest with yourself. You don't have to say that in the interview, but when you're at home or like when you're looking in the mirror, you should have an honest assessment of where you stand. Don't think like just because like you solved something in VTU exams doesn't mean you actually know how to solve the problem. So that's another goal of the talk. And then start preparing in groups. This is something that I wish I had when I was in 7th Sim. Like when it comes to internals or like lab exams, like we were super friendly. We used to help each other and make sure like everybody in our class get ahead. But when it came to placement, everybody was silent. Like it's almost like even if you ask somebody like, oh, have you done this or have you started preparing for placements? Everybody should just stay silent or say, oh, I haven't started. So it was kind of like a secretive business. So I really hope when you are in 7th Sem or when you are in the placement interviews, I hope you all can actually teach each other and interview each other and like, learn from all that. So that's like another goal. And also like giving interviews it's almost like learning to ride a bike. So you can try to learn to ride and then fall a few times and then just give up and say it's not for you. But you can also say, okay, I'll really put in the effort and learn how to do it. And then once you do that, it's a life skill. Like these days, I mean, especially software engineers, they don't stay in the same company for a really long time. So they keep jumping. So it's really important life skill to have, like knowing how to interview and like knowing how to present yourself. So I really hope that you can learn from this and and whatever the skill that you have, and you can take it to throughout your career. So, little bit about me. Like Jyoti ma'am gave a very generous, nice introduction about me, but I also want to give a more critical and real introduction. So, so I studied in VIT from 2007 to 11. So, like reading from textbooks for video exams was really hard. So me and like all my batchmates used to rely on like Xerox notes. Do you guys still do that? Yes. Okay. So I'm just like you, and I was not like the topper of the class. Or like when I think first week of like our placements, none of the guys in my section had a job offer. So it's I'm not so I wasn't like the top of the class or anything like that. And even for example like the lab programs, like I used to take shortcuts for Shubhaman class for computer graphics. I used to, it was so easy for me to memorize and just write the program and come out of the lab instead of actually learning and putting in the effort. But I, like all those like I guess failures, whatever, so all that I paid the price by actually putting in more effort during my masters or when I was preparing for the interviews. It's the same thing with the data structures also. Like for VTU, like out of the eight chapters, you usually study 5, right? So for data structures, I remember very well that until doubly linked list, so until doubly linked list, that was part of the VTU, and that part I actually really knew well. Like, so that part, even in my Microsoft interview, doubly linked list was one of the questions, and like even like I could solve that very easily. But for binary trees and for the other 2 chapters in VTU that I didn't study, I actually 2 years ago I had to put in a lot of effort to learn that. So if you guys actually look at the long-term picture and just not focus on like just getting out of the lab or like just getting the internals, so don't look at short-term. Like especially every program that you write. I mean, when you get a job, you'll be writing programs every day, right? So you just spend time to learn the basics and understand instead of taking shortcuts. So those are some of the shortcuts. Yeah, and like, I had a shortcut. So those are some of the shortcuts that I took. But I don't want you guys to do the same mistakes. So hopefully you guys can avoid all that. And during my time at Target also, like I could have really spent time on like learning the job or like improving my coding skills, but I wanted to do masters, and so I probably spent more time researching on that. Then in Texas A&M University, one of the biggest things that I think I learned is taking negative criticism and actually work on your code. So usually in any lab exam that you may have written, they usually will need some kind of output, and then as soon as you code that, you're done. You'll never touch that program again, or you'll never even worry about that. But in reality, even if you work in a company, the fact of the matter is, like let's say if you write 50 lines of code, your teammates will come and say, hey, this line is unnecessary. You can use this approach instead of this. And so your teammates will actually come and review your code, and it takes some effort to learn that you can actually change that code. So you should be open-minded. If somebody says like your program is bad, doesn't mean they hate you. Don't take it personally. So you should learn to change what you write, and take responsibility for what you write. And in Schlumberger, I worked 4 years, 2 years as a virtual reality and augmented reality developer. So made games, wrote games in Unity, and then for 2 years I worked as cloud software engineer. And from 2020, I've been working in Microsoft. And like while I was in Schlumberger, like I was still interviewing. But I was actually getting rejected. I got rejected from Amazon, Cisco, EA, and Microsoft. And so this was in 2016, I think. So, and then after that, I went back and really analyzed like what I was doing wrong in the interviews. And my topic basically covers that, like how you can analyze your mistakes and how you can improve your the way you interview. And once I did that, I it almost like a light bulb moment. So after I did that, like I got offers from the Microsoft. So this part is the responsibility process, and there is a book on this. But I have a story that relates to this chart. So 2 years into my Schlumberger job, my manager pinged me and said, "Hey Kumar, you're broken the bill." And then immediately I said, "No, I haven't." So I basically immediately denied the whole thing, saying like whatever program that I wrote didn't break anything. Then he sent me a link for like a broken build, right? And then I looked at it, and then I said, oh, but this was peer reviewed by this other teammate, right? So I tried to lay blame on others, saying like even though it was my mistake, saying like, hey, this guy approved my pull request. And then after that, I was trying to justify, saying like even though the build is broken, like I'm not at fault. And then the other things are like you can write your program with the same, saying like, oh, I don't really. I mean, I did this a lot when working in lab programs. When you're writing, sometimes you're like you really don't want to, right? So don't have like all these are like the bad mindsets. So like these things will like it will never give you a job, and even if you're in a job, it can actually work against you. If somebody is changing, if somebody is asking you to change your code, if you're like going around creating drama, saying like, oh, my code is still correct, or like if you're trying to prove yourself right all the time, you will get rejected, and then the company will actually fire you. So don't fall into all these traps. So that's my overall message in this. And some people can also learn the wrong lessons. Like in 2017, when I got rejected from a couple of interviews, I thought, okay, I'm actually happy with somebody's job, and then I stopped looking. So that's a sign of a quitter. So we don't fall into that trap as well. So like only way to get a better company or like get your dream job is actually to take responsibility. And it's not placement office's fault that you didn't get a job. It's not your friend's fault that you didn't get a job. It's actually you just have to work on yourself. And like it took me a really long. So I got in Microsoft like 2 years back, right? So for me to learn all these lessons, it took me 6 years in my career to learn all this. But you guys are actually in a much better position. So if you guys start doing all preparing the right way, you can actually, I mean, you all can Google, Microsoft, Facebook. So that's my, so I really like this chart. Like even when some of your friends are complaining, or you can actually call them out, saying that if somebody says, oh, there was not enough companies in the placement, or if somebody says like that, they are probably in one of this, right? They are probably saying in denial mode, saying like it's not my fault, it's or the problem doesn't exist. So make sure you know this, like have this at the back of your mind, and take responsibility for your career. Okay, so why is the interview preparation difficult? Like it's a lot of times you are always looking for short-term solutions, especially when you have like internals and exams like one after the other. Sometimes you may think it's easy to just by heart a program, but if you take the long-term approach, at some point you'll have to learn coding. At some point you'll have to learn those algorithms. So you might as well learn early and use it. And then when the second one is like when I said the quick. So a lot of people quit after they give 2 or 3 bad interviews. They learn the wrong lesson, saying like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I change my subject or branch. So don't quit. That's yeah. This even applies to when you're actually giving the interviews. So in your interviews, at some point, they will ask you to solve a problem for which you don't know the answer. Maybe you have not heard of the algorithm or it's completely new. So what we are looking for is that you actually try and have a conversation and try to keep going. One easy way to get rejected is to just quit. Nobody likes quitters because let's say if somebody hires a quitter, even in the company they'll try for 2 minutes or try to Google, and if it's not there, then obviously they'll come back and like bug the teammate, right? So like we want, I mean, in software engineering in general, we want people who are autonomous, who can figure out the problem by themselves, and who just don't say, oh, I don't know that algorithm, or I haven't done this before. So don't be in that mindset. And yeah, people talk about success stories very well, but I'm trying to change that by talking about the behind the scenes also. Some people have no idea why they failed the interview. So like it's really hard to be very critical of yourself. So it's really easy to blame the interviewer or say like, oh, there was no way you can solve that by O of n. So I was right, the interviewer was wrong. So it's very easy to get into that mentality. But like if a person has failed an interview, it's because of them, not because of any other excuses. So stages of your interview prep. So maybe you have to earn for this, but this is usually the way like the hiring process works in the US. I'm pretty sure it's very similar here. We'll start with the resume preparation, then online coding, and everybody starts at hello world, right? So we all start from there, and it's actually okay to admit, or like if you are in that stage, it's okay, it's totally fine. Like it usually takes like 3 to 6 months of preparation to come from like zero to complete the whole thing. So it's totally okay. And then you can learn like the algorithms, like string manipulation, sorting, searching, linked lists, graphs, regression, and then a little bit of system design. That's usually, if you prepare that much, that's good for most of the companies. But some startups actually look for specific skills. But if you're really interested in a particular company, then you may have to prepare some more based on it. But this is for a software engineer role, that is usually in terms of technical preparation, those are it. And you also need to prepare for non-technical questions. Resume prep, like have any of you done a resume or not yet? How many of you have a resume? Sorry? Yeah, so not a lot. So I will not go into too much detail on this one since you guys have time. So, but the key thing is, even when I was a student, I never actually shared my resume with my friends because like, I don't know, maybe I was afraid that they will copy my format or maybe copy this, because you all take the same courses, right? Your resume is gonna look very similar. But the lesson I want you to take from resume preparation is like the more people that you show, your resume will actually get better. Like if you show it to someone and then they say, oh, you have a spelling mistake there, or if they find something negative, you have to take it as a gift, because some recruiter would have seen the same thing, and if you can't spell check your resume, they'll probably won't be interested in you. Because if you don't put in the effort to look at your own resume, why will recruiter or somebody else will, right? So whenever people find out mistakes, like be happy about it. be happy that it was not a recruiter who saw that mistake. So just be open-minded and keep changing your resume because it will evolve over time. And don't make some of these like obvious mistakes like, oh, I know Excel. That's not a skill in 2021. So I've seen people who've done that. And also don't lie. Like if you say I know Golang, like I can ask you a question which will clearly tell me whether you know it or not. So don't include anything that you don't know because that's like an immediate red flag. Online coding. So I think this is the part which requires most preparation. Do you guys know about leetcode.com? Okay, so that's good. That's at least some of you know it. So leetcode.com has I think 1,000 questions. That is actually too much, but you probably need to do 100 to 200 programs there in order to really feel comfortable in an online coding interview or in an in-person interview. So, but doing those 100 problems, it's really not about the number. You can actually do 10 problems, but actually really know how to solve it. But if you've done 100 problems by just looking at the answers and just typing that again, then you're not really preparing. You're just fooling yourself and wasting your time. So don't do that. Even if it takes a really long time for you to learn all those concepts, and even if it takes time, put in the effort to actually learn the concept. Because nobody will ask you the same question. There will be some variation, but it's really important that you know how to solve it, and then just don't memorize or just because that will never work. Long term, you will not remember what you know. So solve problems on LeetCode, or I think Geeks is also good. Solve problems for understanding, and also your speed matters. Let's say you have all your preparation you have done on LeetCode on your laptop. If they ask you to solve the same problem on a whiteboard, if you haven't touched a whiteboard in a while, that could be really weird. And it's also during the interview, it's very strange that you have to write and also talk. So it's almost you are doing the job of a lecturer, where you have to manage the person who's listening to you and also write and also explain. So those things are those skills are hard and it takes time. So that's why by grouping up and studying together, we can actually improve all that. So yeah, so your speed matters. Even if if you are comfortable just writing the programs, then your typing speed may affect your interview performance because online coding will have time limits. So make sure you also work on the speed and not just accuracy. Decide which language you want to use. Even though I mostly written C# code throughout my career, I decided to use Python for my interviews because all the syntax is so short. Most of the programs that you take 40 lines in C#, you can actually in Python, if you really know how to use it, you can actually write it in 10-15 lines. So that's the reason I picked Python. You can obviously choose any other language, but make sure you know which is your favorite language and why, and you should be able to talk about that. And time complexities. I don't think that you will get any interview where people won't ask you about time complexity. So you really have to know that. If you have to go back to data structures class notes and learn it again, do that because that's very important. Practice solving on whiteboard. And the last one is most of us have never come to a position where you are on a whiteboard and then you're trying to solve a problem which you don't know or which you've never seen before. For example, for my friend in Google, one of the questions was, how will you put internet on a moon? Okay, so obviously nobody has solved that problem. So just don't blank out when people ask you such questions. So what they are expecting is that you actually talk back and have a conversation with the interviewer and dig more into what the problem is. So if, for example, that problem in the end it turned out that it was a problem about it was a graph problem where you have some kind of like a emitter which has a radius and then how many. So it did, like that question was basically about where you will place those emitters so that you will have internet connection over there. So like they will ask you some random, they'll build a story around the question, but your job is to convert that into a lead code problem where everything is very defined. This is the input and that's the output. So it takes some conversational skills to get from that story to actual problem. So, and this comes by practice. So make sure you guys team up and like ask each other questions and make sure you're comfortable in those situations. Like let's say you're on a stage and talking about something you don't know. So you really still have to show that you're confident and you should not blank out, and so that happens to a lot of people. So make sure if you're already in that situation with your friends several times, then you'll be very comfortable. So make sure you work on that. So preparing your questions. So these three are like some of the example questions that my friend had sent me. It's really, some people think like after an interview they like to ask for questions to the interviewer. That's a great chance to impress that you have done the research about the company. So if you have done a very good research and if you have asked very clever questions, it's a great chance to impress. So make sure you research about the company very well before you go for the interview. And then behavioral questions. So this is something that everybody likes to ignore or like think like, hey, who doesn't have like soft skills, right? So everybody thinks they're great and they'll not work on it. So that's like very common mistake that I see. Like some of the behavioral questions, they can be very tough. Like so I listed some of these here. Like they'll ask you, for example, one very common interview question is, tell me about some of your weaknesses, right? And if somebody tells me like the textbook answer for that, saying like, oh, I'm very detail oriented, I'm always on time, that is my weakness. So if somebody says that, that's like a huge red flag for me and for most people. The reason is like when I'm trying to have a conversation with that person, saying, and I'm expecting an honest assessment, but what they are saying is like they're saying they're simply saying that they have a weakness and they're trying to show that as a strength. So don't you may if you read about this like online also, people may suggest that say something like this, but this will actually backfire very quick, because if a person cannot openly admit that they have made mistakes, if you hire them, they do the exact same thing in the company. They'll always try to claim that they are always right, and that's really like how will you work with such a person, right? So like none of the interviewers will select you if you make those kind of mistakes. So so it also needs a lot of preparation. Like behavioral questions, it needs knowing yourself very well. Like if you don't know, if you can't talk about a time where you made a bad decision, then what it really tells me is that you actually really never really introspected yourself. And who would want to work with such a person, right? If I'm always right, it's good to be confident, but if you're so overconfident that it's like impossible to correct you, then that's a big red flag. So make sure you put in the time to prepare for all this. And once you prepare for this, you almost like you will sound like a different person. Like when I have done this with my friends, where like initially they would like they would give the wrong answer or like say something that they shouldn't say. But once you really practice all this, you really become good at it. Or like even things like tell me about yourself and things like that. So it needs practice and you constantly need to improve what you say. Yeah, so these were some of the some questions that I like to ask. So make sure you spend a lot of time knowing yourself and coming up with these stories, because that's very important. And the other reason why stories are important is after the interview, right? So let's say four people interview you, and four of us, maybe they're teammates or not, they are trying to discuss why we should hire this person, right? If you have a really memorable story, I have a story about how I converted the response time from 30 seconds to 3 seconds, right? So that is a really short story that people can actually tell others to convince that they need to hire you. So if make sure you have a really stories that they can remember, and they will actually, if you do that, even if one person say don't recruit him, the other team actually say, oh yeah, I really like this guy because of XYZ. So those stories actually have a lot of value. So the trade-off. So actually in this one, I want to know which one do you think is in an interview? Should you say that you know all this? Or yeah, can you admit that you don't know something? What do you guys think? Could that some of you say that admit? Even though the interview is not Viva, it's not you don't have to sit there and come up with stuff so that they hire you. What usually happens in an interview, as an interviewer, I'm just waiting for you guys to make some mistake, okay? And then as soon as you make that one or two of those mistakes, I have enough data that I don't need to hire you, and then I can move on. So that's, I mean, it's very sad view of the reality. But the thing is, the more you talk, the more there are more chances that you will say something which you shouldn't have said. One story I can tell you is I was interviewing someone for machine learning. She was really into machine learning and all that, and we actually had a very good conversation. And I think we had a good rapport. And then I asked her, "Oh, this K-means algorithm sounds very complicated. So what is it?" I asked her, and she tried to explain for a few seconds. And then she actually admitted that, oh, this is just a library in Python. You just have to import it and use it. So it's not that complicated. That's what she said. But if you say something like that in the interview, you're really not helping your case, right? So so sometimes you may get a really good rapport with the interviewer, and then just talk too much, and then that's how they reject you. So it's a lot wiser to talk less and be very strategic about what you say. And it's kind of a very difficult advice to implement, because you are in the interview, you're very desperate to get the job, you want to say something and impress them. But the actual reality is you're just trying not to get eliminated, right? So say even if you, so don't talk too much. If you do that, it'll hurt you two ways. You can say something stupid, but you can also cut off the interviewer. If I'm trying to say no, stop and talk about something else, and if you keep blabbering and without even acknowledging that I'm still here, so it can work bad that way also. Preparing solo versus groups. What do you guys think? Groups. Okay, I think that's I'm very happy about that. But hopefully you can show that by, I don't know, you can actually do mock interviews. I mean, you can actually go and interview 7th semester folks, and you will actually learn a lot by being an interviewer. So don't think that mock interviews or preparing group, don't think you're helping that one person who's actually doing the interview. even by being an interviewer, you'll understand what kind of mistakes that candidates make. So I'm glad that you said groups. Yeah, even if you do all this, you should already have a job. Even if these don't work, you can go a little higher. You can make sure you have a lot of code on your GitHub and other people are using it. That's also important. If you just have some code on GitHub and nobody really cares, then that's I mean that's good, but it's not that good. You can contribute to open source projects. You can if I see that in the resume, that's like it's a really big plus for me. Make connections on LinkedIn and ask for guidance. Like all the BAT alumni, everybody were at your stage at some point. So if you reach out to some person that who you have in common with, if you reach out to them, they'll actually feel happy. I mean, right now I'm reminiscing my college days. So ask for advice. It's totally okay thing to do, especially on LinkedIn. Also make sure. Yes. So you can having really cool projects is a really big plus, especially for since you don't have a lot of you don't have work experience, right? So your project will actually make or break your resume. So make sure you have a lot of projects that are not directly relevant to the curriculum, because everybody in here would have solved the same or they have the same syllabus, right? So they would have done the same thing, but what other passion projects or like what other things that you do, that will also have a really big weight on the resume. So make sure you highlight that. Like if you have a chance to involve in something outside CS or something outside the syllabus, you should be happy about that and just go do it. Yeah, and then even after that, you can learn even fancier algorithms like dynamic programming and things like that. But you probably need that only if you're like targeting Google and probably Google. That's it. Like for Microsoft and everything else, it would probably be even Microsoft. Like the more people get rejected here, like because of their attitude problems than the coding. Like a lot of people, they will solve the problems, but they're not really the humble or the learn it all mindset that we really look for. They're like the know it all mindset. I know all this. This is the program that I wrote, and that is the best like O of one solution. There's no other way to improve. So if you have that mentality, then it's really difficult. Yeah, thank you. That's my LinkedIn profile. Connect with me, and that's my email. I'm sure you guys have questions.